The crystal forest gleamed with an ethereal radiance as Damien trudged through the undulating terrain of Aurelis. Above him, the violet sky stretched endlessly, punctuated by twin moons that cast an otherworldly glow upon the golden temple that dominated the horizon. His armor, worn from countless battles across 3 systems, creaked as he adjusted his plasma rifle and continued his march toward the central temple. Another job! Another payday! He muttered to himself. Though this assignment felt different. The Aralesian High Council had paid handsomely, 5 times the standard mercenary rate, for protection of their sacred crystal temple during the planetary alignment. Rumors of the Korvax destruction fleet mobilizing near the Cygnus Quadrant had pushed the peaceful Aralesians to desperate measures, hiring off-world protection. As Damien approached the temple complex, the air grew heavy with energy. The legendary ley lines of Aurelis, currents of pure metaphysical power that coursed through the planet like veins of magic, converged at this very spot. Crystal formations jutted from the ground at impossible angles, reflecting fragments of light in hypnotic patterns. Scholars across the galaxy theorize that these temples channeled and stabilized the volatile energy, preventing planetary cataclysm. "Halt, outsider!" A slender figure emerged from behind a crystalline pillar, armor gleaming with embedded gemstones that pulsed with inner light. "State your purpose." Damien produced his contract crystal, letting it project the holographic authorization. "Damien Kratos, Terran mercenary. I've been commissioned by your council to reinforce temple defenses during the alignment." The guard, Lyra, as he would later learn, studied him with luminescent eyes that betrayed her mistrust. "A human defending our most sacred site? The council grows desperate indeed." She gestured toward the golden spires rising behind her. "Follow me. Commander Thalos awaits in the central chamber." As they walked through the outer courtyard, Damien felt a strange pull, an inexplicable attraction toward the inner sanctum of the temple. It was subtle at first, a whisper of awareness, like a distant melody heard through water. By the time they reached the main entrance, the sensation had intensified to an almost physical tug, causing him to stumble mid-stride. "Are you ill, human?" Lyra asked, suspicion evident in her tone. "Just acclimating to the atmosphere," Damien lied, unwilling to reveal the strange compulsion he felt. Something inside that temple was calling to him, or to something within him. The temple interior defied conventional architecture. Golden arches curved impossibly, seeming to bend reality itself. Crystal formations pulsed with rhythmic light, creating patterns that Damien's mind struggled to comprehend. At the center, a circle of robed scholars surrounded a pedestal, upon which rested a single crystal, larger than a human head, its facets shifting and changing without any apparent movement. Commander Thalos, distinguished by his ornate armor and the crystalline staff he carried, stepped forward to greet them. Unlike Lyra, whose features bore the characteristic angular sharpness of Aralesians, Thalos appeared almost human, save for the subtle luminescence of his skin. "Damien Kratos," Thalos spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Your reputation precedes you. The Battle of Proxima Centauri, the Titan blockade, the Martian uprising." "Ancient history," Damien replied curtly. "Perhaps, but history has a way of echoing into the present." Thalos gestured toward the scholars and their crystal. "Do you know what we protect here?" Before Damien could respond, an alarm shattered the reverent quiet of the temple. Crimson light flooded the chamber as a holographic display materialized in the air, showing a fleet of black ships entering the atmosphere. "Korvax," Thalos breathed, face hardening. "They've come earlier than predicted." Damien's mercenary instincts took over. "How many defending forces do you have?" "The Temple Guard numbers 50. We have automated defense systems, but they were designed to contain energy fluctuations, not repel a military assault." "And civilians?" 300 scholars, priests, And support staff. Thalos's expression grew grim. They come for the Nexus crystal, and for what sleeps beneath it. The strange pull Damien had felt intensified suddenly, like a hook lodged in his very soul. What exactly sleeps beneath that crystal? Thalos exchanged a meaningful look with Lyra. Something the Korvax must never access. Something that, in the wrong hands, could shift the balance of power across the galaxy. Damien unholstered his rifle, checking its charge. Then we'd better make sure they don't get their hands on it. As if in response to his words, the first explosion rocked the temple complex. Outside, through the crystalline windows, Damien could see the black ships of the Korvax fleet descending like predatory birds, their weapons already firing upon the outer temples. Lyra, mobilize the guard, Thalos commanded. Focus on the eastern and western approaches. He turned to Damien. Can you secure the northern perimeter? It's our most vulnerable point. Damien nodded, already calculating tactics, positioning, potential choke points. This was what he knew, what he excelled at. Yet, as he moved to execute his orders, that strange pull tugged at him again, this time accompanied by a whisper that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his mind.
Damien?
He froze, scanning the room, but no one else appeared to have heard the voice. Danger comes. The time approaches. You must awaken what sleeps. Damien? Thalos called, noticing his hesitation. Is something wrong? Shaking his head to clear it, Damien tightened his grip on his weapon. Nothing. Securing the northern perimeter now. As he rushed toward his assigned position, the voice faded, but the pull remained, a constant reminder that something beyond his understanding was unfolding in this alien temple, and somehow, he was intrinsically connected to it. The first wave of Korvax forces hit the northern perimeter like a tidal wave of obsidian and crimson. Their exosuits, designed for both space combat and planetary assault, gleamed with malevolent purpose as they advanced. Damien had positioned himself and 10 of the temple guards at the natural bottleneck, formed by 2 massive crystal formations. Hold position, he commanded, as the first volley of enemy fire illuminated the violet sky. Target their propulsion systems first. The temple guards, though primarily ceremonial in peacetime, proved themselves capable warriors. Their crystal-enhanced weapons discharged beams of concentrated energy that sliced through the Korvax ranks with precision. Damien's own rifle, modified with Centaurian plasma technology, left smoking craters wherever he aimed. For 20 minutes, they held the line successfully, repelling the initial assault with minimal casualties. Then, the ground beneath them trembled. A secondary Korvax force had tunneled under their position, emerging behind their defensive line. Fall back to the secondary position, Damien ordered, providing covering fire as the guards retreated. A Korvax soldier charged him, weapon raised. Damien pivoted, delivering a crushing blow with the butt of his rifle before finishing the attacker with a point-blank shot. As they regrouped at the temple steps, Damien received Thalos's communication through his earpiece. Eastern perimeter breached. They've destroyed the Moon Temple. The Moon Temple, one of the 7 satellite structures surrounding the central temple, now lay in ruins, its crystalline dome shattered. Damien felt a strange resonance, as if the temple's destruction had caused a psychic wound within him. The pull toward the central chamber intensified painfully. We need to fall back to the inner sanctum, he told his squad. Defend the approach while I assess the situation inside. The inner sanctum was chaos when Damien arrived. Scholars rushed to secure ancient texts and artifacts, while Thalos directed defensive operations from beside the central crystal, which now pulsed with alarming intensity, bathing the chamber in waves of azure light. The ley energy is destabilizing, Thalos explained without preamble. The destruction of the Moon Temple has disrupted the balance. If the Korvax destroy another satellite temple, the consequences could be catastrophic. "What about evacuation?" Damien asked, wincing as another explosion rocked the complex. "Impossible! The energy release would vaporize half the continent." Thalos pointed to a doorway behind the crystal pedestal. "There is another option. Beneath the temple lies the ancient chamber where she sleeps." "She?" "Elira, the goddess of Arelis. Not a god as your people might understand, but a being of pure ley energy who assumed physical form millennia ago to protect our world. She sacrificed her consciousness, entering a state of suspended animation to stabilize the planet during the Great Convergence." The voice in Damien's mind returned, louder now. "The time approaches. You must awaken what sleeps." "And you think waking her will help us now?" Damien asked, struggling to focus through the growing pressure in his skull. "It is our last resort," Thalos admitted. "But the awakening ritual requires a special conduit, one with the right resonance. None among our people have proven compatible." The pull became an irresistible force. "I'll do it," Damien heard himself say, though he had no idea what the ritual entailed. Thalos's eyes widened in surprise. "You? But you're not—" He stopped, studying Damien with new intensity. "Unless—" "It's not possible. The ancient texts speak of bloodlines scattered across the stars, descendants of those who once communed with Elira." He shook his head. "We have no choice. Follow me." They descended a spiraling staircase that seemed to drill into the very heart of the planet. With each step, the ambient temperature rose, and the air grew thick with energy that made Damien's skin tingle and his vision blur at the edges. The walls around them were not built but grown, living crystal that pulsed with internal light. "The chamber ahead houses Elira's physical form," Thalos explained, as they reached a massive door inscribed with symbols that shifted and changed as Damien looked at them. "To awaken her, you must place your hands on the crystal heart and allow your consciousness to bridge with hers." "And if I'm not compatible?" Damien asked. Thalos's silence was answer enough. The chamber beyond the door took Damien's breath away. A perfect dome of crystal, so clear it was nearly invisible, encased a pool of liquid light. Floating above this pool was a figure of breathtaking beauty, a woman, or something approximating female form, composed of light and energy rather than flesh. Currents of power swirled around and through her suspended body, connecting to veins of light that ran through the chamber walls and, presumably, throughout the entire planet. At the edge of the pool stood a pedestal, upon which rested a crystal, identical to the one in the sanctum above, though this one pulsed with a heartbeat rhythm. "The crystal heart," Thalos said reverently. "Place your hands upon it and open your mind. If you are compatible, Elira will recognize you and awaken." Another explosion, more violent than any before, shook the chamber. Dust and crystal shards rained from above. "That was the Sun Temple," Thalos whispered, horror evident in his voice. "We're running out of time." Damien approached the crystal heart. The pull now so strong, it felt as if invisible hands were guiding him forward. As he placed his palms against the warm surface of the crystal, the voice in his mind became a chorus. "Awaken us. Complete the circuit. Become the conduit." Energy surged through Damien's body, arcing between his hands and the crystal in brilliant threads of light. Pain unlike anything he had ever experienced tore through him. Not physical pain, but the agony of his consciousness expanding beyond the confines of his physical form. He was aware of Thalos backing away, of distant explosions as the battle raged above. But these sensations were secondary to the overwhelming presence now flooding his mind. Elira! Her consciousness brushed against his, ancient and vast, curious and cautious. Damien felt himself drawn into her awareness, his sense of self momentarily dissolving in the immensity of her being. Images flashed through his mind. Arelis in its primordial state, the first temples rising, Civilizations rising and falling. Wars fought for control of the ley energy. Elira's decision to enter stasis to stabilize the planetary grid. And deeper still, a connection he could not have anticipated. Recognition. Familiarity. Impossibly. Elira knew him. Or rather, knew the genetic heritage carried in his blood. Descendant of the Guardians. Her voice resonated within him. Your ancestors served as my protectors, my channels to the physical world. Their blood runs in your veins, diluted by time and distance, but unmistakable. I don't understand, Damien gasped, his physical voice a whisper compared to the thunder of their mental communication. You will, now we must rise. The floating figure in the pool of light began to move. Limbs that had been still for millennia flexed. Eyes that had been closed opened, revealing irises of pure energy that shifted through colors beyond human perception. The liquid light surged upward, enveloping her form as she rose to a standing position. Damien felt the connection between them solidify, threads of energy binding his consciousness to hers. Through her eyes, he could sense the ley lines of the entire planet, could feel the damage being done as the Korvax destroyed the satellite temples one by one. Elira! Thalos breathed, dropping to one knee in reverence. You have returned to us. The goddess, for Damien could find no other word to describe her, turned her luminous gaze to the scholar. When she spoke, her voice was like music, each syllable resonating with harmonic overtones. Commander Thalos, faithful guardian, the danger is grave. She turned toward Damien, and he felt a surge of warmth through their connection. This one has awakened me, and through him, I shall channel the power needed to repel the invaders. Another explosion rocked the chamber, more violent than any before. Through their link, Damien felt Elira's pain as another satellite temple fell. We must hurry, she said, moving toward the chamber exit with a grace that belied her millennia of stasis. Already, the balance shifts dangerously. If the central temple falls, Aurelius itself may shatter. As they ascended to the main temple, Damien struggled to maintain his sense of self against the overwhelming presence of Elira in his mind. Their connection, rather than diminishing with physical proximity, seemed to strengthen. He could feel her emotions, determination, concern, and a curious wonder as she experienced the physical world again through her own senses and, partially, through his. They emerged into chaos. The inner sanctum had been breached, temple guards fighting desperately against Korvax soldiers who had penetrated their defenses. Lyra led a small group defending the central crystal, her armor dented and scorched from combat. As Elira entered the chamber, all fighting momentarily ceased. Her radiance illuminated the entire room, casting harsh shadows behind the armored figures of the Korvax invaders. Even through their faceless helmets, Damien could sense their shock. Defilers! Elira's voice reverberated with power that shook dust from the ceiling. You who would corrupt the sacred energy of Aurelius for your war machines. You who would destroy balance for power. Depart now, or face judgment. The Korvax commander stepped forward, his black armor distinguished by red markings denoting his rank. The goddess of Aurelius, he said, his mechanically filtered voice betraying no fear. Your awakening was not anticipated, but it changes nothing. The ley energy will be ours, and you, a being composed of that very energy, will be harvested along with it. He raised his weapon, a cannon that hummed with ominous power, and fired directly at Elira. Damien felt her response through their link before he saw it. Energy surged through the connection between them, drawing partly on his own life force as she erected a barrier of pure light that absorbed the Korvax weapon's discharge. So be it, Elira said, her voice tinged with sadness. She raised her arms, and the temple crystals responded, their light intensifying until the room blazed like the heart of a star. What followed was a battle unlike any Damien had ever witnessed or participated in. Elira moved like living lightning, energy cascading from her fingertips to incapacitate the Korvax soldiers. Yet Damien could feel that her power was constrained, limited by the damage already done to the temple network, and by her recent awakening. Through their mental link, strategies formed. Damien directed the temple guards to positions that complemented Elira's movements, creating a synchronized defense that gradually pushed the invaders back toward the temple entrance. He fought alongside them, his rifle augmented by occasional bursts of energy that flowed from Elira through their connection, allowing him to fire blasts that no human weapon could normally produce. But the Korvax were relentless. For every soldier they defeated, 2 more seemed to take their place. Outside, through the shattered windows, Damien could see more ships descending, disgorging troops onto the temple grounds. "We cannot sustain this defense," Thalos shouted over the din of battle, bleeding from a wound to his shoulder. "The remaining satellite temples are under heavy assault." Elira's voice resonated in Damien's mind. "We must reach the heart nexus. Only there can we channel enough power to repel them permanently." "The heart nexus?" Damien asked aloud, firing his rifle to cover Lyra as she dragged a wounded guard to safety. "The convergence point beneath the central crystal. It is where all ley lines meet, the true heart of Aurelius." Damien relayed this to Thalos, who nodded grimly. "It has never been accessed in my lifetime. The power there is unpredictable." "Do we have a choice?" Damien asked, as another explosion shook the temple foundations. "No," Thalos admitted. "But reaching it requires traversing the labyrinth, a maze of energy currents that few can navigate. I can guide us." Elira's voice assured Damien. "Through our connection, you will see the path." Damien organized their retreat to the central crystal pedestal. "Lyra, hold them here as long as you can. Thalos, you're with us. We're going to the heart nexus." Lyra nodded, determination hardening her features. For Aurelius, the entrance to the labyrinth lay directly beneath the central crystal. As Elira approached it, the massive gem rose into the air, revealing a passage that spiraled downward like the interior of a nautilus shell. "None have walked this path since the Great Convergence," Thalos whispered as they descended. The labyrinth defied physical laws. Corridors shifted and changed as they walked, pathways appearing and disappearing with the pulse of energy that flowed through the walls. Without Elira's guidance filtering through his mind, Damien knew he would have been hopelessly lost within moments. As they progressed deeper, the nature of their connection became clearer to him. He was not merely communicating with Elira. He was serving as an anchor for her in the physical realm. Her millennia in stasis had weakened her ability to maintain corporeal form. Through him, through the blood of her ancient guardians that ran in his veins, she could stabilize herself and channel greater power. "The Korvax have breached the inner sanctum," Thalos exclaimed, receiving reports through his communication device. "Lyra is falling back to the secondary position, but they're overwhelming our forces." "How much further?" Damien asked, feeling Elira's concern through their link. "We approach the heart," she responded. "But I sense the Korvax have discovered another entrance. They seek to reach it before us." The path ahead suddenly blazed with light, revealing a chamber vaster than any they had yet encountered. At its center floated a crystal formation that dwarfed all others, a massive, multifaceted gem that pulsed with the combined energy of all Aurelius's ley lines. Currents of power visibly flowed into it from every direction, creating a web of light that filled the cavernous space. "The heart nexus," Thalos breathed in awe. But they were not alone. From an entrance on the opposite side of the chamber, a squad of Korvax soldiers emerged, led by their commander. They carried a device unlike any Damien had seen before, a metallic sphere bristling with crystalline protrusions that seemed to absorb the ambient energy of the chamber. The siphon. Elira's voice hardened both in Damien's mind and in the physical air of the chamber. They would drain the heart nexus, channeling its power to their war fleet. The Korvax commander spotted them and barked orders to his squad. Soldiers moved to positions around the chamber, weapons trained on Damien's group, while technicians began calibrating the siphon device. "You're too late, goddess," the commander called across the chamber. "Once the siphon activates, the energy drain will be irreversible. Aurelis will be nothing but a dead rock, and its power will fuel the Korvax expansion across the galaxy." Damien raised his rifle, but Elira placed a hand on his arm. Through their connection, he felt her strategy forming. The heart responds to intention and will. If we can establish a stronger connection to it than their technology allows, we can turn its power against them. "How?" Damien asked mentally. "Through you, through our bond. But it will require a complete merging of our consciousness, a deeper connection than any guardian has attempted in millennia. The risk to your identity, to your very self, is significant." Damien glanced at the Korvax, now activating their siphon as energy began to flow into the device. Above them, he could sense the battle raging in the temple, feel the pain of each satellite temple that fell to enemy fire. The fate of an entire planet, perhaps an entire sector of the galaxy, hung in the balance. "Do it," he decided. Elira's essence surged into his mind with the force of a tidal wave. Damien gasped as his perception expanded exponentially. Suddenly, he could sense every ley line on the planet, could feel the energy flowing through the crystal formations, could perceive the subtle manipulations the Korvax technology was beginning to impose on these natural currents. His body began to change, becoming a conduit for power that no human form was designed to channel. Light shone from within him, his skin taking on the luminescent quality that characterized Elira's manifestation. His eyes, had he been able to see them, now glowed with the same shifting colors as hers. "What's happening to him?" he heard Thalos ask, his voice seeming to come from a great distance. "We become one." Elira and Damien spoke simultaneously, their voices harmonizing in otherworldly resonance. The Guardian and the Guarded, united in purpose. The Korvax commander recognized the threat. "Stop them," he ordered, and his soldiers opened fire. Energy bolts streaked across the chamber, only to dissipate harmlessly against the aura that now surrounded the merged consciousness of Damien and Elira. Together, they extended their awareness into the heart nexus, connecting with the central crystal on a level that transcended physical interaction. The Korvax siphon sputtered as they countered its technological manipulation with the natural flow of will and intention. The device began to overheat, its crystalline components cracking under the strain of conflicting energy patterns. "Impossible!" the Korvax commander shouted, rushing to the device to manually override its settings. But Damien, Elira, was not merely defending. Through their merged consciousness, they reached outward, extending their awareness to the temple above and beyond, to the satellite temples that still stood, and even to those that had fallen. The entire network thrummed with their combined will, energy flowing not according to the physical constraints of the crystals, but in response to their directed intention. The heart nexus crystal pulsed with increasing intensity, its light growing blinding. The Korvax soldiers retreated from it, shields raised against the radiance, but their commander remained at the siphon, desperately trying to maintain control of the energy flow. "This ends now," Damien, Elira declared, raising their hands toward the nexus. What followed defied description in human language. The heart nexus released its energy, not in a destructive blast, but in a wave of restructuring power. Reality itself seemed to ripple outward from the central crystal. Damaged temple structures began to rebuild themselves, crystal by crystal. The Korvax siphon imploded, collapsing into itself with a sound like 1,000 bells shattering at once. The wave continued outward, washing over the Korvax forces throughout the temple complex. Their weapons and armor, designed to absorb and corrupt ley energy, overloaded and failed. Some fled, scrambling for their ships. Others were immobilized as their technological systems crashed irreparably. In orbit above Aurelius, the Korvax fleet experienced the same wave. Ship after ship lost power, their energy cores inverting under the influence of the purified ley energy surging from the planet below. Within the heart nexus chamber, the merged consciousness of Damien and Elira began to separate. The immediate threat neutralized. Damien collapsed to his knees, his human form unable to sustain the energy levels their merging had channeled. His skin still glowed faintly, veins of light visible beneath the surface. But the full radiance faded as Elira's consciousness gently disentangled from his. What did we do?" he gasped, every muscle in his body aching with exhaustion. Elira knelt beside him, her form now more solid and defined than before, as if their merging had anchored her more firmly in physical reality. "We restored balance," she said, her voice carrying both triumph and sadness. "The temple network is healed. The ley lines flow as they should once more." Thalos approached cautiously, awe evident in his expression. "The Korvax are retreating. Those who could reach their ships have fled the system. The others have surrendered." Damien tried to stand, but found his legs unwilling to support him. Elira caught him, her touch sending warmth through his drained body. "Rest, Guardian," she said softly. "You have given more than any mortal should have to give." As consciousness faded, Damien felt himself being lifted in arms that were simultaneously physical and formed of pure energy. Through the remnants of their mental connection, he sensed Elira's gratitude, her wonder at finding a descendant of her ancient protectors, and something else, a growing affection that mirrored his own inexplicable attraction to her from the moment he had entered the temple. His last thought before darkness claimed him was that he had found something on Aurelius that no mercenary contract could have prepared him for, a connection to a power and a being beyond anything he had imagined possible. Damien awoke in a chamber he had not seen before. Walls of living crystal surrounded a bed that seemed to have grown organically from the floor, its surface conforming perfectly to his body. Sunlight filtered through crystal panels overhead, casting rainbow patterns across the room. He sat up cautiously, expecting pain, but found his body completely restored. More than restored, he felt stronger, more vital than he had in years. His senses seemed sharper, his awareness extending beyond the mere physical. "The effects of our merging." Elira's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, her form now almost entirely physical, though still radiating a subtle luminescence. She had adopted clothing similar to the Arelisian scholars, though the fabric seemed to shift and flow like liquid around her body. "I feel different," Damien said, rising from the bed to test his steadiness. "You are different," she confirmed, entering the room with fluid grace. "No human has merged consciousness with a being like me and remained unchanged. Your genetic heritage made the connection possible, but the experience has awakened aspects of your nature that were dormant." Damien flexed his hand, noticing faint lines of light beneath his skin that pulsed with his heartbeat. "What am I becoming?" "What you were always meant to be," Elira said, stopping before him. "The ancient guardians were not merely servants or protectors. They were partners to beings like myself, bridges between the energy realm and the physical world." Memory of their merged consciousness flooded back, the expansion of awareness, the sensation of energy flowing through and around him, the intimate connection to another being that transcended physical boundaries. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked, noting that the quality of light suggested it was morning. 3 days, Elira replied. "The people of Aurelius have been celebrating since the Korvax retreat. You are being hailed as the goddess's warrior throughout the settlements. And the temples? Restored. Our action through the heart nexus repaired the physical damage and re-established the energy balance. She paused, a shadow crossing her luminous features. But the attack exposed a vulnerability we cannot ignore. The Korvax may return, or others like them. The knowledge that a being like me exists, that the ley energy can be harnessed as they attempted, will spread. Damien understood the implication. You're not returning to stasis. I cannot. Aurelis needs active protection now, not a dormant guardian. She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the energy emanating from her form. And I find that after millennia of sleep, I have no desire to return to that void. The physical world has attractions I had forgotten. The intensity of her gaze made Damien's newly enhanced senses tingle with awareness. The connection between them, though no longer the complete merging they had experienced in battle, remained. A subtle thread of consciousness that allowed him to sense her emotions as she could sense his. What happens now? He asked. Before she could answer, a chime sounded, and Thalos entered the chamber. The scholar bowed deeply to Elira before addressing them both. Forgive the interruption, but the council has assembled. They request your presence to discuss the future of Aurelis's defense. The council chamber occupied the highest level of the central temple. Its walls made entirely of transparent crystal that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding landscape. 7 Arelesian elders sat at a circular table, with positions prepared for Damien, Elira, and Thalos. As they entered, the elders rose in respect, bowing first to Elira and then, to Damien's surprise, to him as well. The goddess and her guardian honor us with their presence, the eldest counselor said, her voice quavering with age and emotion. Aurelis stands in your debt. The formality of the proceedings struck Damien as surreal. 3 days ago, he had been a mercenary expecting a routine protection assignment. Now, he was being accorded the respect given to mythological figures. The council session that followed focused on the implications of the Korvax attack and the awakening of Elira. Plans were made to strengthen the temple defenses, to establish new protocols for monitoring space around the Aurelis system, and to reach out to neighboring systems for mutual protection pacts. Throughout the discussion, Damien found his thoughts wandering to the strange new reality he found himself in. The mercenary life had been his existence for so long that he struggled to imagine an alternative. Yet his connection to Elira and to Aurelis itself had fundamentally changed him. He could feel the ley lines beneath the temple, sense the energy flowing through the crystal formations around them. And what of you, Guardian? The question from a counselor drew him back to the present. Will you remain on Aurelis to continue your protection of our goddess and our temples? Before he could formulate a response, Elira spoke. The Guardian's path is not confined to Aurelis, she said, her melodious voice filling the chamber. His awakened heritage gives him a greater purpose, one that extends beyond our world. Damien looked at her in surprise, sensing through their connection that she had been contemplating this while he recovered. The attack on our world was not isolated, she continued. Across the galaxy, points of power similar to our ley nexus exist. Many lie dormant or unprotected. The Korvax sought our energy to fuel their conquest, but they are not alone in such ambitions. You propose to leave Aurelis? Thalos asked, alarm evident in his voice. After we have only just witnessed your return? Elira smiled gently. Not immediately, and not without ensuring Aurelis's protection. But the awakening of the Guardian reveals a truth I had long suspected, that other descendants of the ancient protectors exist among the stars, their heritage dormant until activated by proximity to beings like myself. You want to find them, Damien realized, reading her intention through their link. I want us to find them, she corrected. To awaken them as you have been awakened. To rebuild the ancient order of guardians and protect the power nexuses throughout the galaxy before they fall into hands like the Korvax. The proposal sparked intense debate among the council. Some argued for keeping Elira on Arelis, focusing solely on their world's protection. Others saw the wisdom in her broader vision, that the best defense for Arelis might be ensuring that other power sources could not be weaponized against them. Throughout the discussion, Damien remained silent, processing the implications. The mercenary life had been wandering, purposeless, except for the next contract, the next payday. What Elira proposed was a mission, a calling that resonated with the newly awakened aspects of his nature. When the council session concluded, without a firm resolution, Elira suggested they take time to consider all perspectives. As they left the chamber, she guided Damien not back toward the healing rooms, but up a spiraling crystal staircase that led to the very pinnacle of the central temple. They emerged onto a platform open to the violet sky, the twin moons of Arelis visible, even in daylight. Below them stretched the crystal forest, its formations glittering like frozen stars. "It's beautiful," Damien said, the vista taking his breath away. "I've been to 37 planets in my life, and I've never seen anything like this. And yet there are wonders beyond Arelis that even I have only glimpsed in the cosmic awareness of my kind," Elira replied, moving to stand beside him at the edge of the platform. "Nexus points of power that manifest in ways unique to each world, each civilization." Damien turned to look at her. This being of energy and light who had taken human form, who had merged her consciousness with his in battle. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Of all the people who could have come to Arelis, who could have become your guardian, why was I compatible?" Elira studied him, with eyes that shifted through colors beyond human naming. "The simple answer is bloodline. You carry the genetic heritage of the ancient guardians. But that is not the complete truth." She reached out, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw with gentle curiosity. "There is something in you, Damien Kratos, that resonated with me from the moment you entered my temple. A quality of spirit that called to me even in my stasis." The warmth of her touch sent currents of energy through him, awakening sensations that transcended physical attraction. Through their link, he could feel her fascination with his human form, her wonder at emotions experienced through flesh rather than energy. "In my mercenary life, I've seen too much death," he admitted. "Too much destruction, fighting other people's battles for credits that never seemed to bring any lasting satisfaction. And now I feel like I've found something worth fighting for, something larger than myself." He hesitated, then added, "Someone worth protecting." Her smile was radiant, literally glowing with inner light. "Then you have found your wildest dream, guardian, as have I, awakening to find a world still worth protecting, and a partner with whom to share the journey." "Partner," he repeated, liking the sound of it far more than guardian or protector. "The ancient texts speak of many relationships between my kind and yours," Elira said, moving imperceptibly closer. "Guardians, yes, but also companions, friends." Her voice lowered to a whisper that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his soul. "Lovers." The kiss that followed defied conventional description. It was physical, the warmth of her lips against his, but also energetic, a mingling of their essences that created a feedback loop of sensation and emotion. Through their connection, Damien felt her experience of the kiss as she felt his, creating an intimacy that transcended the merely corporeal. When they finally separated, tiny motes of light danced in the air around them, manifestations of the energy their contact had generated. "The council will debate for days," Elira said, a hint of mischief in her tone that seemed charmingly human. "In the meantime, I would show you more of Arelis and learn more of the worlds you have seen." "And after?" Damien asked. After we begin our journey, there are temples on distant worlds that have stood empty for millennia, waiting for beings like us to reawaken their purpose. There are descendants of guardians living ordinary lives, unaware of their heritage and potential. Her expression grew serious. And there are forces like the Korvax who would exploit the power nexuses for conquest and destruction. Quite a mission, Damien observed, but he felt no hesitation, only a growing certainty that this was the path he was meant to follow. One we undertake together, Elira assured him. Equal partners in power and purpose. As they stood at the pinnacle of the temple, violet sky above and crystal forest below. Damien reflected on the strange turns of fate that had brought him to this moment. He had come to Aurelis as a mercenary seeking payment. He would leave as something far different, a guardian awakened to his true heritage, bound to a goddess by bonds, both mystical and deeply personal. In all his travels across the stars, in all his battles and contracts, he had never imagined finding a purpose that resonated so perfectly with his innermost being, or a companion who could understand him on levels he had never known existed. Together, then, he agreed, taking her hand. Energy flowed between them, a visible current of light that sealed their pact more effectively than any formal oath. Below them, the crystal forest pulsed with renewed vitality, the ley lines of Aurelis shining through the transparent formations, like veins of pure possibility. Above, the stars began to appear as the day faded to twilight, each one a potential destination in their coming journey. Damien had always considered himself a realist, perhaps even a cynic, someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness to believe in higher purposes or cosmic destinies. But, as he stood with Elira, feeling the power they had only begun to explore, he allowed himself to embrace a new perspective. Perhaps some dreams, even the wildest ones, were waiting to be discovered rather than merely imagined. And perhaps the greatest adventures began, not with a contract, but with an awakening. Elira seemed to catch his thought through their connection. "This is only the beginning, Guardian," she said, her voice full of promise. "The first step on a path that will take us beyond the known stars." "I'm ready," Damien replied, and knew with absolute certainty that it was true. Together, the human warrior and the awakened goddess turned their gaze to the emerging stars, their linked hands glowing with the power of possibilities yet to be explored, dreams yet to be fulfilled, and a partnership that would reshape the fate of worlds.